this is going to become our structural grid, so I want to X reference it. So I'm going to just call this one X grid. And that's just how I want to name it so that I remember which one it is. And then I'm going to save this. And then the reason we're doing this as a separate file as an X reference is because your columns and your structural layout, it should technically be pretty similar as you go up from level 1 to level 2, right? You shouldn't have a column and then in the next floor there isn't a column and then on the third floor there is a column all of a sudden. Or if you shift one, you don't want to have to go through every single drawing and shift that column over the same amount, because you might miss one or you might move one too far. So the X reference is nice because rather than drawing all this information in every single file, if it's exactly the same, we can use one file and then reference that file in other files. So rather than drawing it in that file, we can just tell it, look at this file and put that information in. So if you ever change this XGrid file, it should update anywhere you had that in there. So the first thing I recommend is let's just make 2 layers here. So right now we only have 1 layer. So let's go to our layer properties and let's add 2 new layers. And I'm going to make one the columns. Oops. So let's say A. Usually the architectural ones have A before them, the layers, and they're always 4 letters, but I'm going longer here. So, and then A grid will be your structural grid. And then here we can make this, let's make it red. And then my columns can be yellow. You can make this whatever color you want. And then for the grid, I'm going to change my lines. So rather than using the default line, the default continuous line type, I'm going to load one that's dashed. This one looks good. Let's just do a hidden one.
Which one is dashed? The grid?
Yeah. Because it's not an actual thing. I mean, you can leave it solid if you want. I'm just going to do this for now to make it read a little bit simpler. So now that we have that, we can close this. And we can start off by just drawing a line. So we can use P line. So I'm just going to draw from here. And then make sure you have your ortho lock on. So that's this guy. Or you can hit F8 as a shortcut. That makes sure you're at 90 degrees perpendicular always. And then we can make this, let's say 30 feet long. Oh, let me check my units first. Make sure I'm in architectural.
Wait, what did you do to make it dash on your?
So in your layers, under line type, you'll have to load one. And then just pick one that's dashed, whichever one you like. You can do dots if you want. So now that we're here, let's draw our line, P line. And let's see if it'll let me do 15 feet now. There we go. And then hit enter. I'm just doing that for now. You can make these as long as you want. And the nice thing is once we get into Revit is way easier to do your grid lines and stuff like that, because it's actually, in AutoCAD, it doesn't matter what we're drawing. In AutoCAD, it's a line. Whether it's a grid line, whether it's a wall or a window, they're just lines in AutoCAD. It's not like smart. It's just always drawing lines. Once we're in Revit, a grid line will be a grid line and it has its own properties.
Where did you go again to check the units?
You type in units. So if you type in units, you should be able to do this architectural. And then I changed my precision a little bit less tight, and then you can hit OK. So here you can see I moved it onto my grid layer. Once I selected it, you just click there, you can move it to that layer, and then it should start showing up dashed. If you don't see the dash, that's probably either you don't have the line type assigned, or it could just be that the scale of that line weight is too small or too big, so it ends up, it's actually dashed, but it's so small that it looks solid. So if you type in LTS, line type scale, here you can see the default is 1, but if you, let's say you needed to be able to see a different height, you can put like 0.5, and let's see, so you get smaller. Then we can repeat that and put 50. And now if you zoom out, see, you can see it's much thicker.
Like, so the units is your architectural.
Yep. And then
precision 0 to 116.
Yeah, you can, as long as the main one is architectural, is the main one that you want to make sure you change. Here, once you have that, we can then offset this line. So since we're using wood as our structure, that will be kind of what dictates how far apart you want to space your columns. So let's say like typical span for like wood, you'd be between kind of like 15 feet to 18 feet, or you could probably go farther. The thing with the grid is the farther you span, the deeper your beams will become. Does that make sense? So if you have a column here and a column 40 feet away, in order to get a beam across, it's going to be probably like 5 feet thick. So when you look at your building, you're saying like, okay, my second floor is 14 feet high, but in reality, my deck is going to be super fat because the structure is spanning so far. So in order to shrink that, you put the columns closer together so that you can use a smaller beam to span from column to column. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That's the basic behind how you space this out. So let's say I offset this 15 feet, and we can go there, and then we can do that again. Or actually, yeah, that's a nice clean number. And then later we can come in and change this. So I'm going to create just 3 bays this way.
How tall is that?
It doesn't matter, really. Like, I made it 15, but then you can grab it always like that and say, so there's this command called stretch, which is pretty cool. So if you pick an object, then it lets you kind of like grab it and then stretch it. But if you select, remember we talked about selecting from left to right versus from right to left? Mm-hmm. If you do it this way, and you grab the endpoints you want to stretch, you can do all of these at once really fast. So if you grab them all like that, now you hit stretch, now we can click there, and then we can pull this up. And then you could type in how far you want to go, let's say 20 feet, and hit enter. And then once we've made one of these, you could rotate it, or you could make a new one. So let's just try rotating all of these. I'm going to type in rotate. Oh, no. And then I'm going to specify, let's just say anywhere here. And then if you just rotate like that, see, it's going to rotate those. But if down here, before you click again, you tell it to make a copy, it will rotate the direction you want, and then it will leave the original ones there. So it makes a new version of it rotated. So that just saves you a step from having to copy them over. So then I just want to do 90 there. And then here we can move this from here, put that there. And now we don't need that guy, I guess. And then here you can grab it just like that, stretch it that way. And we can do the same here. You can just move that over. So I'm just going to type move. And the ends aren't really what matters, it's where these intersections are. So that's the most important part, is where each of these hit is where you'd have a column. And if you want to adjust the space, and say you don't want it square, you wanted it to be 15 that way and then only 10 vertically, we can just move this one down 5 feet. And there you go. And then I can delete that one, and then I can offset that 10 feet. There to there, there to there.
I don't need to set that, but when we check like how far we have to space out the columns.
That you'll be looking at some sort of reference or something like a book, or you can look up, or if you have, yeah, so in here this shows you, so depending how far you want to span, it will, the real limitation is the material and the depth. So if you need to span it, you need to get deeper usually if you're going farther. And there'll be, so here it shows you for decking and every material. But see, on this axis, it shows you your span, and then here it shows you your depth. So as you go farther, you're going up because they're getting taller. So if you stick around 15, 16 feet, you're probably at 12 inches deep. But if we double that and go 30, now you're at 24 inches deep. So that will all just depend on how tall you want to make your building and how much space you want before you hit the ceiling. And we'll look at that more in Revit too, because it's not like it's fixed. Once you get it in there, you can adjust it.
Can I get the names of those books, please? So do you recommend them?
Sure. Yeah, these are really good.
I mean, will we be using them like throughout the course?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to reference them and you'll be using them.
Or even in other courses. Like
oh yeah, these, especially if you're gonna get licensed and you're gonna need to study for your exams, these are like the books that you use to study for your exams.
Is that the latest edition?
No, this one's old. Okay. This was from when I was in school. I think now they're on like 6th or 7th edition. This one's 4th.
I have the dark blue one.
There's a dark blue one, and then the newest one I've seen is like a blue with a light blue. Yeah.
That should be okay.
It's most of the time it's the same material. They just move it around. Cause I mean, wood is still wood. It wasn't not wood 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So we have this, and then for the columns, I'm just going to make a rectangle. I'm going to use an 8-inch by 8-inch square to represent my column, and then that will change depending on like your structure and like what material you're using, how far you're going, and how much load is going through. But if you type in rectangle, and then here, before you click where you want to go, you can click down here dimension, or you type the letter D, and then it wants to know the length. I can say 8 inches, the width 8 inches, and then enter. And then a cool trick, if you draw a line diagonally, and then we move this guy from there, you can put it right on the intersection. Then you can delete this. So this is a column, so we should make this go in our columns. And if you want to make it read a little easier, you could hatch this. You could do like a solid hatch. And then you need to select both of those, or just the hatch at least, and move it onto the columns. So there's a column, and now I want to copy this column onto wherever I have an intersection. So copy, and I click this point, there, put one here. It's the easiest way to do this is to finish one row and then copy the whole row, rather than trying to do them all random. And if you have a reference point that's the same, rather than clicking on that guy and then moving down, I like clicking here, copying to there. And then, so now we have this, and we can just hit save, right?
What did you use for the basic button again? The LPS?
Yeah, you just have to make sure the layer, under the layer properties, that you gave it a hidden line.
Yeah,
or dashed. And then if you want to adjust the size of the dash, is what you're saying?
for the columns? No, for the dashed line you have.
No, you adjust the scale of your line type. So if you type in LTS, right now I'm showing 50, but if you put it back to 1, it'll look solid, or if we put it to, I don't know, 20, you can get it lighter like that. So that's probably good. It's just there to help you guide. And then we might not need all of these. I'm just making a grid for now, and we may end up shifting one over or adding an extra one. So this is just kind of the basic starting point for what we want to do. And I remember my building was probably going to be rotated the other way. And then let's make a nice clean point. Let's say I want to move, so there's two ways you can move stuff. You can click, well, a lot of ways you can move. Click here and then click the next point, or now I could type the coordinates of that point. So if I want the center of this column to be at 0, 0, 0, you can type 0, 0, 0, and hit enter. And it will move something. I think I canceled out of it. Let's move that to 0, 0. Weird, it's not doing it. Let's try the corner.
How big did you make the columns?
8 by 8. If you want to zoom your whole drawing to kind of see, you can type in zoom and then do like extents. I think there's also a shortcut up here somewhere. The easiest way really to do it is to use your scroll wheel and double click it. I used to do it. So just do it.
Yes.
If you do it fast enough. My mouse doesn't let me do it.
I've never used that. That's good to know.
Yeah, that's a super easy way to do it. You used to be able to type in ZE really fast. Oh, I think they fixed it.
Yeah, it is.
For a while it became, oh yeah, you used to be able to hit ZE, enter, and it would work. But it became the zebra analysis. I don't know why. Yeah, that was one of the first things I did at my old office. But now I'm in the habit of hitting Z, enter, E, enter, and it does it too.
Can you center them on the intersection?
You could.
It doesn't matter.
As long as you're consistent with whatever you do. That's just something to make it a little bit easier.
The record though, the shape of the building is not, you're not prescribing that?
No.
Okay.
You guys make whatever you want. So we have this ready to go, so let's save it. So I'm going to hit Control S, save. And then we can look at, so let's start with these, and then we can add in more. So how do we get our XREF in here? So first, let's save this drawing. Let's call this one floor plan 1, save as level 1. Actually, let's write floor plan first, that way they're all the same. And we could put today's date to 2. So once that's saved, in order to bring in the XREF, what we can do is go up here. You can do this, there's like 1,000 ways you can do this. You can either go insert and attach it like that, or if you forget all this, the easiest thing, like this to me is actually more confusing. Like once we get into Revit, you have to use the ribbon, but AutoCAD was initially designed without the ribbon, so like you can do everything through text. which to me has always been like the strong part of AutoCAD. So if I want to bring in an xref, you can type in the word xref and hit enter, which is the same as if you went over and to insert external reference. And then here it shows you have this, which is the file that we're looking at. If you want to attach another one, you just click up here. And see there's a little arrow. If you look at that, there's all these different types of documents you can attach. And it's the same exact workflow. If you want, let's say you had a PDF, you wanted to bring it in and trace it, that's how you would do it. Let's say you took a picture of your site or you had a Google Maps image, you would attach image this way. There's all these different types of files you can do. So for DWG, it's just the first one. You click that guy, and then it's going to ask, okay, where do you want to find the file? So we're going to go here and find our X grid and say open. And then now you get this. So what this is asking for is, where do you want to scale it? Where do you want the insertion point? Specify on screen, or you can just tell it to default to a specific value. Typically, where I've seen like a real project, like there'll be some sort of survey marker or maybe like a spot on the project that's never going to change, and that becomes your insertion point. Sometimes it's just like a point out in space. So that way, anytime anyone works on a drawing, you align that point, and then the drawing should align. And I could work on it, you could work on it, you have like a civil engineer work on it, and then when we attach all our files and we put the same insertion point, they all lay on top of each other. You don't have to worry about, oh no, you actually moved it too far over or something like that. So I'm going to tell it leave it exactly as it is without doing anything. And then when it asks, see, it's going to stick to my mouse, the insertion point. But instead of doing that, instead of clicking somewhere, I can just type again 0, 0, 0, and hit enter. And it will put that right there on the origin point. So now let's get rid of our xref logo. You can see we have all these spaces, and if I click, let's say I wanted to move that column now, and I click there and hit move, it's going to move the whole thing because it doesn't treat it as individual lines. You can still snap to it, it has all the properties of it, but once you pick it, see how your ribbon changed? That's your first clue that you've got an external reference that you've picked. So some people like taking the external references and then like locking them, or putting it on a layer and locking the layer so you can never accidentally move it or anything like that. So that's all good like techniques to use. You can edit it. So let's say now like we went crazy and we decided to put like a circle in the center of our building, like that. All we have to do is hit save. So you go save, and this is saved, and then now when you come to this file, it will tell you external reference file has changed. Do you want to reload Xgrid? And you click yes, and then see the circle appeared. So what's nice about that is we can reference that X reference in level 1 and then reference it again in level 2, and then you just update the main reference and then it's never going to change. You don't have to change it 20 times on each sheet. It's just one change, you just update it on all the other ones, and then that link will remain correct. So let's say we wanted to come into our building here through the ranger station, through the welcome center, so we can put that here. Oh, and see how it like disappeared, our line there? That's something called the draw order. So AutoCAD will draw everything based off of like an order for how you want to draw it. And that means basically like some stuff can be on top of other stuff. So right here I don't see that line. So what you can do is you can select the X reference and you can type in draw order, or DR, and it appears draw order, and then this is just like in PowerPoint or any other like software, when you click on an object and you tell it send it to the back or send it forward, it's the same thing. So do you want it to be above objects, under objects, front, or back? And we can click back, and see, now you can see our line here. Before you couldn't because it was showing the grid on top. So that's just another way you can do that to make it a little bit easier on you to see. So now that we have this, let's start laying out our spaces. So we said the ranger office needs to be overlooking this. So we can grab that guy. And maybe we don't want to cover up the view, so we'll go on this side. And then we have stores can go anywhere, bathrooms. So observation actually needed to be 3 times this size.
What is that circle again?
Oh, I just drew a random circle to show that how it would update.
Oh.
So if you go back here, it's here, and then now let's say we draw an X across it. I was just showing save. So once this has been saved, you'll note it's been saved because the little asterisk goes away in the tab. If I move this, see it has an asterisk, that tells you haven't saved this file. A lot of software will do that. So if you ever see that and you're like gonna close your computer, make sure you save it first. So you hit save, it'll go away. You come here and then you get a pop-up. See, it says an external reference has changed. And then you click there and it will pop up. If it doesn't pop up, you can type xref and come here, and then you can just right click and say reload. This is also where you get rid of it. Like you can unload, you can detach. Binding, so xrefs exist on their own, right? So you have xref as a file, and we can see them if we go to the folder. So there's my xgrid, here's my floor plan. So they're 2 separate files. So what you need to understand is that this file is looking for that one within this folder. If we go back to AutoCAD, this is the only thing that I see people get mixed up with X references. I'm referencing xgrid, and if we look here under this, it's found at C users whatever, and it goes into our class folder, and then that's the name of the file. If I rename that file to like xgrid 2019, it won't find it, and it will fail, and it will just disappear on this file, because it's gonna still look for that name in that folder. If you move it, so remember when we were learning InDesign in the other class, how if you moved your link, where that file lived, the link would get broken and it would just disappear. The same thing will happen here. So X referencing is exactly the same. That's how basically InDesign works. Everything is X referenced into that. So if you remember it like we did in InDesign, it's the same thing. If you don't know InDesign, it doesn't really matter. It's just X referencing in AutoCAD works exactly the same way that it does in other software. So it's not something unique to AutoCAD. But the important thing is, if you move this or rename it, AutoCAD won't know that you did that, and then it will disappear. So once you open your file, it will tell you, hey, there's missing links, and all you have to do is relink them. So to do that, you can go here and say, you can right click on it. Oops. Come on. For some reason, my computer's just thinking. There you go. I want to right click on this one. Anyway, you can go here and, oh, am I not in the right file? That's why. I don't have an xref there. It's this file. I was wondering why it disappeared. But here, you can detach, or you can change the path type. So if you do make relative or make absolute, if you ever move the original absolute paths, I think look for it in an exact spot. if you do relative, as long as you move these files together, so like the original and the xref, if you move those like from this folder into another folder, it will still work because it looks within the folder. But if you have the other ones, it will only look in that folder ever, even if you move them together. So that's just a little thing that they can do. You can also here select the new path, or you can find and replace if it's lost and you moved it on accident, and you can go and tell it to re-go back and like link it to the new spot. Binding, where this becomes an issue, X-referencing is when you're sharing files. Just like with InDesign, if you share someone that original file, so if I send this AutoCAD file to someone, they'll get an error that says, I can't find this because this is what AutoCAD will have. So it's going to look in their C drive under this folder, which they probably won't have, a Lucas folder. So it will tell you they can't find it. So in order to avoid that, if you're sending files, you have to bind it first. And that basically takes all the files and saves them into a little folder, and then you send that folder to someone. And in that folder, it has all of the different xrefs.
Is that kind of like a zip file?
You'll have to zip it if you want to add it as like an attachment or something like that.
E-transfer or something.
Yeah, so a zip file is just going to say, like, because a lot of times when you're trying to transfer files or do certain things, it can only do it with one file at a time. So a zip is just going to take all of those and like put them in a folder and basically compress it so that it can go out together. And then in order to access those, you have to like unzip them and then take them all out. But that is what you would need to be doing. And then detach will just take it out. And then you can reload or unload if you don't want it like showing. Unload is different than detach because it's not going to destroy it. It's not going to just like throw it away. It'll just turn it off for now. So you might, let's say you started off with like the site plan as your xref. We could then, if we wanted to, go back and then turn it off later.
And sorry, you said this.
No, go ahead.
I catch up. So when you brought in the grid, why don't the dashed lines show up?
Oh, so here, if you zoom in, I'm not seeing anything. So let's go to line type scale. So LTS. And then it's 1. So try typing in like 50.
I type 59, still doesn't show.
Try a different number. Either like try 500, like keep changing the number until you see it. Because depending what your line type is, you may need a different number.
So why doesn't it bring it in the same as it already was?
Because in this file, the line type scale was set to 1. In the other file, it was set to something else. But when you bring it in, it's going to look on that file what is your scale set to. And that's just a value for the line type. It's not saying that the drawing will grow or shrink. It's always going to be the same scale drawing. But the way it displays those lines is different. And then you can change it again later. Once we go into paper space, I guarantee you it won't be right. If you change the line type scale in model space, when you go to paper space, it's going to look either like solid line, or your whole building will be one dash. And like it just goes like the next dash is like the other building away. So then you gotta then, sometimes the line type of 1 is set up for like the paper space.
What spacing did you use again, like between the columns?
This is 10 in this direction and 15 in that direction. But you can do different. It doesn't have to be exactly that.
I just want to have a...
I tried to make the letter bigger and I can't.
Just pick your, once you have something, just select it and then type in scale. And then click once and then drag and you'll see it'll get bigger. So that's one easy way to do it fast. And for this, we don't have to be like super precise because this is just really just laying out.
You said select, do scale and...
Yeah, so pick the objects and type in scale. Oops, scale. And then once you have what you want to scale, you hit enter and it says base point. Does it say that? And you click one time and then wherever you move, so go slow because sometimes I see people click that and they just move and they're like, it's not doing anything, but really they're building like something like, yeah, you can see from outer space, like the Great Wall of China. It's just like huge. So now that we have that, we can go here. I'm gonna grab this guy, move this one. Oh, figured it out. So this is where it gets fun. It's kind of like it's like a little puzzle. So I'm not gonna grab the labels. And you'll see once we get into Revit, some stuff is very annoying, but all this like really annoying like stuff like moving text around and like is way easier to do in there. What? So I got this guy, and it's not exact, but you can also have like a row of columns outside. So let's grab all of this. Let's say I wanted an overhang on the front end. So we could move this all back, say one grid line. And then I only want that overhang to be 5 feet. So I want to move these columns back 5 feet. So I'm just telling you what I want to do. It's not like you have to do this. So I'm going to show you how to edit an XREF. There's two ways you can do it. One is we can go here and then change stuff here, right? So let's say we don't want these weird things anymore, like it's like X-Men building. Get rid of that. So we can do it this way, but you're basically working blind, right? I can't see anything else. I only see my grid. So that's one way to do it, and some people work that way, and sometimes it's really useful to work that way. Another way you can do it is if you select the XREF in the drawing where you're referencing it. I can't edit it right now. I have to first tell AutoCAD I want to change something on the XREF. So at the top, you can click Open Reference. If you didn't already have it open, it would find that reference and open it in AutoCAD. On the left, you have Edit Reference in Place. What this lets you do is you click it, and it basically will ask which one you want to edit, and then you hit OK. And then it won't let me because I already have it open. So let me close it.
Do we have to have an extra?
Yep. So now here, let me pick it. You go Edit Reference in Place. Let's grab that guy. And see, it's grayed out all the stuff that was in the model space, but then these lit up like they're actually there. So what I can do with this, let's grab this, and that was 15 feet, so I'm going to move this back up 10 feet. Or, I guess that's 10 feet. Oh, I hit 10 feet. And then this guy, we can leave it like that. So now, once you're done editing, you have to accept it, which for some reason it's looking kind of weird. For some reason, usually these just see these up here, but for some reason the way it's displaying, it has it in there. But you should see a save changes or discard changes, and you can hit save. All reference edits will be saved, so you hit OK. And then now see, it's dropped it in. If I was referencing that file in another file, the xref, it would now change in that one, or it would tell you there's been a change made. So when you go to edit in place, you are actually changing the real xref. So if you don't want to do that globally, then don't do that. I'm going to show you now another way to draw, which is similar to an xref, but it's local to one file. So that's called blocks, and the way blocks work is kind of like a group where so you have groups, blocks, and then you have xrefs. So a group is just you grab some items and you just group them. So like we can grab this and this work group. So now if I want to move this, I can just click on it one time. See how the whole thing highlights and you have like this guy in the middle? That's a group now. And you can tell up here because like all these group things like appeared. So we can move this as a big group basically. But there is no special properties to it. It's just a bunch of items that we've now decided to collect together so that we can move it around and do stuff like that. If you want to get rid of that, you can ungroup it, or you can type explode. I think the shortcut is just E. Explode. Once you type explode, it gets rid of that group. Oh, it's actually also gone all the way. So if you want that to be together again, let's join those. Okay. There's also something called a block. So if I take, let's say I want to draw like a chair or something like that, things that are going to be repetitive throughout your whole model, they're always going to show up exactly the same. You can draw those and make it into a block. And then what that will let you do is you can copy it all over, and then it's basically kind of like a little xref, but it lives within this file only. So it's not going to change in another file if you have the same block. Does that make sense? So I could copy it here, do a save as, and then go back into that block and change it, and it's not going to change the original. That xref that we put in the background there, since this file is referencing it, any file that references that xref now, if you make a change to it, it will carry over into those files. So it's kind of like a trickle-down effect. Whereas a block exists only within one file. It's the same thing as an xref once you've made it. So let's say I wanted to make something that was like a chair. So let's say like 24, 24, 24. And then I wanted to have it back to look something like that. And then maybe we'll do a 2-inch radius. So now I've made this as my chair. If you select that and type in block, it will ask you to name it. So we can call this like chair 01. You say okay. And now if I click on it, see what it does? It like the whole thing highlights. And then I can copy that guy, make a bunch of copies. And where this is different than a group, is I can click this, you can right click, tell it edit block, or you can go to the block editor will take you to like, it'll open it as like a file on its own, and then you can change stuff. If you say edit block in place, you can go into this, it'll say which block, it's chair 1. Notice how we have 5 of them, but it only finds one block because it's the same thing, it's just a copy of it. So now let's say I want to put, I don't know, like a hole in the bottom. Let's put like a circle. So now there's circles in here. Once you're done, you go up here again, save changes. All reference have been saved, and look, all of them changed, even though I only changed one of them, because this is a block. But if I take this and go to another file with that original block that we had started with, the other file wouldn't have changed. Only this one does, because it's a block. If I xref this and I reference that as an xref in all the other files, it would trickle through all of them. So blocks and xrefs are basically the same thing, except one is only local to the file, the other one is global to anything that references. Once we get into Revit, that's basically how Revit works, except they don't call them blocks, they call them families and components. So you have basically a library of little models that you then put into your model, and then they can be stored differently and stuff like that. So for now, don't worry too much about furniture and stuff like that. We'll get to that, but make sure that your layout is working based off of the requirements for the different spaces. So we have this. Let's grab this guy and move him up. My wall is like in that wall. And got that guy. Move. You guys have any questions so far? Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I have observation here. Come on, grab it. And then that's kind of weird. Let's move that guy up. It fits perfect. Who knows? We can do that. We could even do the welcome center larger. You still need to be able to move around through these spaces, so you gotta remember to account for that. So if you're trying to do a corridor, an easy thing you can do is draw a line and then offset it or move. So we said 5 feet. So that's how big your corridor has to be here to get through. So if we want space to get in and out, we got to figure that out, because some spaces you can get away by moving through them. But here, an easy thing we could do with this is you pull that guy over, and then this guy we move down maybe to there, and then how could I see the square footage of this? What's that?
I don't remember.
You select it and you go properties, and then we scroll down. Look at that, 102 square feet. It's pretty close. It doesn't automatically, but what you can do is you can always keep this guy open. So see here, it can do auto hide, and it can just stay like that, the properties. And then you can click something. Where it won't work is if you have more than one thing selected. So see here, I picked that and that. Once you go to properties, it's not gonna know. So you'll only see a little bit.
No, I mean like Revit, the software gives you the square footage, and then you just tag the line.
If you, no, it doesn't do the tag that way.
Okay.
You could, but the way we're doing it is just simple text in there.
Okay.
The square footage.
Do you have more than one thing selected?
No. I mean,
Is it just
the
one
lines,
close?
but
You have to
closed
join it.
lines.
Are they, when you click one, do they all get picked? So select, so you have something like this, right? You have like a line, and then another line.
Yeah.
So in order for it to know kind of the area,
Has to be a polygon?
no, you just need to be able to pick one and have them all select. So let's say you either, you can fill it all them together. So you could do that, or you can do, let's say you just have one, and then offset 5 feet. And then here I could draw this. So let's say it's like this, where they're all individual. So if you pick one, it doesn't highlight all of them. All you have to do is select all of these and type in join, or just the letter J. And then once you've joined them, you should be able to click once and they should all highlight. And then when you go to the properties, it will show you the square footage. You can there is an area thing that you could do in AutoCAD. What's that?
Oh no.
But for now with P-line we can get it, because this really is about as detailed as we're going to get. I mean, we'll draw like the walls and stuff, but we're not going to be getting like crazy in AutoCAD with this assignment. So we've got this guy looking good already. So I need to have a stair, my bike repair somewhere, and then that's basically, so let's say now I'm happy with where this looks. Now I want to go up to the second floor, so I'm going to save this, and I'm going to do a save as. Rather than redo all that work, I'm going to do a save as level 2 now. And then all these guys. You can delete those. So now let's open up the level 1 so that we have both open. So what's this? We need this one. Now we can close that. So let's save that guy and let's go file, level 1. So here's our level 1. Let's say I decide I want to put my stair off of the welcome center so that we can go up here, right here on this corner. So the best way to do that would be to actually put it into the XREF. So at least put like a square or something that shows there's a stair going up there, so that once we go to the other plan, you'll see the stair and the stair will line up. You don't have to worry about the stair being off. Once you're in Revit, it'll actually build the stair for you, and it'll be really easy because like you just have to like click and drag and then you make it go up. But for here, we're doing this all old school. So I'm going to edit my XREF in place.
Stupid question. Does our pavilion have to be a rectangular thing?
No, you can do curve, you can do angle, you can do however you want to do it.
But we have to keep the square footage, right?
Yeah, so the shape can change as long as you have that number, the area. So let's edit this guy in place now. Oops, I hit escape.
It can be approximate, right?
How approximate?
99.9.
Yeah, 10 square feet. Yeah, it doesn't have to be exactly on the dot, but it should be within like 5 to 10% of it. So you don't want to be like half the size what it really needs to be. So let's say I want to add here a square just to represent my stair.
So it needs to be just a separate drawing. We don't need to place it in the park yet.
For now, yeah. Okay. So what we have is the site plan places it in a location, and then we go into the drawings. So we will, once we get this laid out, you can XREF this into the site plan, or you can then update the site plan so that the profile, because on the site plan we really just need like a square to show where the building will be, and then the path coming up to it, and then you can XREF this into it once you have at least a layout, and you just trace the perimeter, and then you can just turn it off.
Are we gonna do the elevations as well or not?
We will, but not in AutoCAD.
Okay.
So here we're going to get to the floor plans, get those laid out, and then we'll switch to Revit.
Okay.
In Revit, you're going to do everything, like elevations, perspectives, floor plans, sections. But it's set up to let you do that a lot easier than AutoCAD.
I hope.
So here I'm going to just offset this just 5 inches just to give it some thickness. And then let's save this. And then we're going to go, whoops, I don't know why I did that. So here's save changes. And so now we can see our stair, or at least something that looks like a placeholder for a stair. So I know I can move this back. And this is all really loose. It's not going to actually end up like this. So we have that. Now the cool thing is if we go to level 2, see it's telling me to reload grid, and as soon as I do that I can see where my stair is going to be. I don't have to guess which grid it was on and how big it was or anything like that. So here we can lay that out. You can put any other spaces that you needed to put, and then so let's start actually drawing some detail on this drawing. So if you wanted to actually lay these out so that you didn't have to do a ton of work, you can, we said 5 inches for the walls, and I want to see the door, how you get in and out of each space. And then you need 5 feet wide for your corridors. Columns are 8 inch by 8 inch, and then we'll work with this and see how we coordinate the location of the columns with the walls and stuff like that. So that's something that as we get into more detail we'll start looking at. But an easy way to do this, you can use the offset and make your distance 5 feet, and then you can pull that in. But notice you'll get a 10-inch wall there. You'll also get one here, and wherever these touch if you do that. So then you'll have to go back in there and clean that up. And then also, like, where do we want the walls? Where do you want windows? Where do you have doors going in and out? So here, this one I think I'll take to there. So in order to draw, let's say, a door, what we can do is you can draw a line across like that, offset that 36 for 3 feet, And then now you can grab this guy. Let's move that down. So remember we made the block for the little chair? The door is another one that's really good to make a block, so you don't have to keep redrawing it. I mean, there are like blocks you can download and put in, and typically at an office you'll have all these blocks already made. So it's really just click it and drop it in, and then you just move it around. But if we wanted to make one here, I'm going to show you a really cool tool called trim. So if you look up here, I think it's that guy, trim. So once you put that in, it will ask select objects, or you can select all. So this is what objects do you want to tell AutoCAD to use as basically like your knife edge. So if you click it, it becomes the cutting edge, and anything else you click after that will get cut either back to it, or it'll be like split across on it. So if I click this and this as my trim objects and I hit enter, now it's looking for what objects do you want to trim to that line. So if I click across like this, it's going to chop those lines away. See that? And then I can hit enter. And then now the other way to use this tool, which is sometimes more useful, is rather than choosing which object is the cutting, you can tell it just use all objects to cut all objects. And it sounds confusing, but once you do that, it's pretty simple. So you hit trim, and then you hit enter, and you just hit enter again to make it select all. See, the default is select all. And now anywhere you click, it's going to trim that line back to the next line. So that makes it super simple to kind of go around really quick and trim all those guys. And then, so I have this, so let's grab a little rectangle from there to here. So that can become my door. And I want to rotate this around that corner. I want to rotate it that way. And then let's draw the swing of the door. So to do that, you can draw an arc. And there's a ton of ways you can draw an arc. The default way is kind of weird. So if like I click, and then you get like, it starts doing like weird stuff like that. And like, I don't really like doing it the default way. The way I like to use arc, you just click the starting point, and then see at the bottom it'll say, do you want the center of the arc or the end point of the arc? I usually hit E for endpoint, and then you can click where you want the arc to end, and then it will say what direction do you want it to go. Oh no, it didn't give me it. It's because I have my ortho lock on. So arc, you hit E to grab there, and then it will want the center, or you can hit D. See at the bottom you have angle, direction, or radius. If you hit D, you just point this way. Now I think you can hit F8 and it will do the arc like that. So once we have that in, that looks kind of like a door. If you wanted to do like a little, you can offset that like 2 inches if you want. And then you could do the same thing here. And then,
so there are no ready-made elements there, right? Like, I mean,
not if you're just drawing. There are blocks and stuff like embedded in it, but this is how you would draw them. Once you learn how to do this, you can make anything you want. That's how the other ones are made.
so there are no like libraries that you can choose from, right?
Not in the standard AutoCAD. You can install things that have huge libraries, or if your office has a bunch of these saved, just like we did the XREF, the block, you can save that on a folder on your server somewhere, and then when you go to create a block, you can just drop them in. So rather than remake them every single time, once you have the library, it's just dropping them in. But to start off, like if you don't have anything, this is how you would do it. Okay. So now I'm going to block this. I'm going to call this door 3 foot 0. Say okay. I knew it was going to do something like that. So let's say 3 0. Was that one of the ones I couldn't include? No. So then there's my door, and then you can make a layer for like doors. And let's see if this will work, or I have to go in there and do it. A door. There you go. So then we can copy that, or you can mirror it. So have I shown you guys mirroring? So if you mirror, you can pick an object, and then you pick where you want to mirror it by, and then it will just make a reflection of it. So if you type in mirror, you pick the object you want to mirror. So I want to mirror my door block, and then you need to draw the line. So once you draw this line like that, it's going to reflect it across that line. So like that. And then it asks, do you want to erase the original? Yes or no. If you hit yes, it deletes the old one. If you're trying to make a new one, then you say no. And then we can zoom in here and type in trim, enter, enter, and get rid of those. Not that that's the best layout for this, but that works for now. We have this weird column sitting here. So what you could do is have, once we get into Revit, this becomes way easier. But you can move this 6 inches from there. Oops. Thought I stretched those.
Looks like reinventing the wheel, those objects are already been created, but we're just building them.
Yeah, because I'm teaching you guys the software. So if you don't know how to do it, like, because I guarantee you'll get to a spot where what happens is people that when you download models off of online, whether it's for AutoCAD, for Revit, or SketchUp, or any other software, what we need that block to do is very different than what someone else might need it to do. Okay. So for instance, let's say you're doing like a gym or something like that. If you are putting in a block for like a treadmill, and you go on that website, because most furniture companies will do this, or equipment, you can go on their site, like you can go on like Herman Miller and click, and it'll show you that exact chair. And they'll go, do you want the CAD? And then like, okay, and you click the CAD, and then literally like see at the back how many little holes there are. It'll have every single one of those drawn. So when you look at it at this scale, it just reads like solid black because there's so many lines, they're all on top of each other, and just the one block for the one chair will have more lines than your whole building. So as soon as you drop it in, it starts slowing you down, and then you copy it like 80 times for all your spaces, and then your model becomes super slow. And you know how we have layers for our file? Once you bring in a block that someone's already made, it has its own layers. Just like the XREFs. Notice here I have layers now for my XREF that I didn't add, but they were in the X reference. Once you bring in another model, all those layers get added, and a lot of times those have more layers than like your entire building. So it adds a lot of clutter and usually way more detail than you need. So the nice thing about knowing how to make, you don't have to, like at an office you might only make a new block very rarely. Let's say you're doing like a really unique design and there's like a certain like curved desk you need to make or something like that that isn't standard, then you might need to make that block. But for the most part, like a door or a chair, your office probably has a block already and you just click on it and just drop it in. But understanding how you would make a new one, you could grab, let's say this exact table, you could find the CAD and then you can open it on its own without putting it into your file and then trace it, just the outline of it so you get the dimensions right. and then you drop that into your CAD as a block that you made, and then that lets you keep the file size small without overloading it. Because basically it's like you're overkilling what you actually need.
Okay. Yeah, I
The
understand
guy in my office that does that. He saves every little thing he draws, and then when he does something, he does separate drawings. Because the minute he pulls that block in, it has 50,000 things in it, and the drawing goes from 2 megabytes to 20, and everything slows down. So then he has his own little drawing, and then we just take the little pieces we need out.
Yep. So it all just comes down to like what is the end goal and how much detail do you need to show. Because if your job is to make furniture and you're doing the CAD file for this, then the entire purpose of that CAD file is to show someone how to build this table. But if we're designing a whole building, then all we need to know is how big is that table and where is it going to go. We don't need to know like how big the screw is going to go underneath here. But then they'll actually draw it, and if you go in their model, it's in there. And by the time you print, like the whole building is this size, and then that little tiny thing is microscopic, but it's like it'll keep drawing lines on top of lines, and it's just like and it just takes forever, and it doesn't look any different, and then it just prints solid black. It'll just look like a black smudge, so then you can't even tell what it was. So that's that part. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, so for Windows you could do the same thing. So a window, typically you can, if you imagine cutting a section through that, you'll see the frame, and then you'll see the pane of glass. So let's say, probably don't have a window in the bathroom, but in the office, we can draw a line just like I did earlier. Let's offset this 6 feet. So it's got a nice long window. That was pretty close to the edge. So here we can do trim, enter, and then we can do a window. Let's offset 2.
So there are no requirements for the window size, right?
No, it's just depending what you want to draw. Once we get into Revit, you'll actually have more types than just a normal window. You'll have like a traditional window, and then we'll have a curtain wall like that, because I want to teach you guys how to do that. So part of your design will have a curtain wall, whether that's interior or exterior. It's up to you and how big it is. We've had some people do like a whole side of their building in glass. So as we start laying this out, I want you guys to be sketching little ideas so you can think about your building, how you want to lay it out. It doesn't have to only be the plan. You can draw like a little perspective or like an elevation, and it can be as simple as what I did up there. You should have some little idea as to like what it is you're trying to do. Then here we can do this. And then typically you can just draw a line down the center. Oh. And then all of that, you can then block it, or you could group it. It's up to you. I'll group this one for now. And then we could make a layer for windows. Typically it's called glazing. And we can make that. Should I use green? No, I haven't. So we have that window there. That way you can tell kind of what's going on. So, does anyone have any questions?